last two panels there, making sure they're attired properly. That's all. Make sure our cell phones are down, so no one else for us to hear. So the whole movie theater is playing, including myself, because that'd be embarrassing. So once again, thank you all for coming out. This is such an important discussion, and I'm really, really pleased to be standing here just playing the role of moderator, so to speak, to talk about a culture that, and a history, a legacy that is so important for us to preserve, for those of us who know about it, but also for us to pass that particular history down. I always fear that it's going to get lost, and that we'll have whole generations that have never heard of the Negro League. So I'm hoping that this is one of those events that will stimulate a lot of events and keep a lot of events going that serve to tell children, new generations, about all of these fabulous men and women who managed and played in the Negro Leagues. So I want to introduce our panelists so that we can get started. A little housekeeping. Thanks again to the Auburn Avenue Research Library, Morris Gardner, making sure everything is together and straight, working hard back there still. And afterward, please do take time to grab one of the purple sheets that is right back there on the desk where Ms. Gardner is standing, and fill that out. Appreciate that very much. And of course, help yourself to lemonade and remaining grapes and so forth as you desire. So our panelists for today include the distinguished James Red Moore. All y'all not about the rest of y'all. I was about to say, all y'all not getting all that. All right. Not the whole hug thing was just for him, but okay. So, and for one more, I should say. And I want to introduce him a little bit further, and say, of course, he's a native to Atlanta, and he played with the Atlanta Black Crackers, as some of you know. The voices from the Negro League dubbed Mr. Moore, quote, the best fielding baseman of all time in his league. And in 2006, he was inducted into the Atlanta Sports Hall of Fame. I have one more special hug to give, because that goes to Mr. Lawrence Pop Williams, a native of LaGrange, Georgia. Played for one of the teams that I tend to get really just excited learning history about. So important, the Kansas City Monarchs outfielder. All right, go ahead. Shout out to Ken. Began his career in 1954, and of course the Kansas City Monarchs longest running franchise in the history of baseball's Negro Leagues. We are so happy to have these two gentlemen here with us. Now back to mere mortal.
Well, that's true.
I'm just kidding. But I'm also very pleased to have someone who's become a friend and someone I greatly admire, and that is Mr. Terrence Moore, who is an American sports journalist. Now, I'm going to punctuate that with a period to say that one of the areas where we still see an extreme lack doesn't just happen on the baseball field in terms of African Americans and behind the scenes in terms of the executive body, but it also happens in sports journalism. You would be amazed to find really how few, right, long-term sports journalists we have working in the major leagues, for example. And Mr. Moore is that rare example. So he's worked among a number, the San Francisco Examiner, the Cincinnati Enquirer, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, of course, and of course you can see him on the local news often. I get a kick out of that when I see him. He's been on the Oprah show, CNN, I'm dropping all the names at ESPN, and he's a columnist for Major League Baseball, so we are so happy to have him here. And then we have someone who is distinguished in a field that also intersects with mine, and so I'm particularly always to welcome fellow writers and artist extraordinaire in theater, among other things, Mr. Calvin Alexander Ramsey, based here in Atlanta. Oh, go ahead. Who is a former advisory board member of the Robert Woodruff Library, Special Collections at Emory. Mr. Ramsey is an accomplished playwright, which is really an understatement, but I don't have time to get into that long bio of all these achievements. Okay. But among other things, he's written children's stories about baseball. He's had a successful play runs. He is just one of the most fascinating people to talk to in terms of what he has done in terms of his artistic career, his professional career. We're really happy to have you here. Mr. Greg White, who I'm just so thankful helped so much in terms of coordinating things with Mr. Moore and really making sure that he's visible and the presence and gets the respect that he deserves continuously. So we're thankful for you playing that role, number one. But we're also thankful to have you here as a historian and as an advocate for the preservation of this history that we're here to talk about today. Mr. White is an active member of the DeKalb County community, and he currently serves as an advisory board member for the Atlanta Sports Hall of Fame. Okay, and then we have someone that's not right, Mr. McDonald. Okay, right. But we do have the person who organized this event, who wanted to make sure we did this within a week of the Civil Rights Game to be held here, as you know, that's next week with Major League Baseball, so it was an appropriate time to have this discussion. And that is Nasir Muhammad, who is a historian of Black Mecca of the South Tours, and partners a lot with Auburn Avenue Research Library and myself. And I am so thankful that his passion, his love for our history in particular, his determination to make sure that we keep it, preserve it, and that we pass it on, brings us here today. So Nasir Muhammad. So without further ado, what I want to do is to begin with, I think, a question that will allow us to sort of eavesdrop a little bit on memories, experiences, and your passion or appreciation for the Negro League history, because I know all of our panelists share that. So I want to start with, we're going to start with several questions and then open it up to you guys to ask questions of our panel and so forth. And the first thing I want to do is to have each of the panelists, as they desire, to just simply say to us, to talk to us about their either first knowledge of the Negro League history or experience of it, and to also, if they will, just comment on their impressions about how important this was to the African American community, and to just sort of, start that rolling, we have to remember that the Negro League, right, and these games used to be the events to go to. This was part of the fabric of life. And so you would see crowds and so forth, coming to see, Satchel Paige and just all of these magnificent players. So this was that, Saturday afternoon or that Friday afternoon. It was really a respected sort of ritual in the black community. So I want them to everyone to share, as you will, your initial experience with that. I want to start, if they care to comment, first, and anything you want to share about your experience or your initial knowledge of the Negro League, and in the case of Mr. Red Moore, perhaps something about how it began for you or how that love of baseball initially began. And then Mr. Williams, if you want to comment with that, then we'll go to Mr. Moore and the rest of the panelists. So, Mr. Moore. So whatever you want to share about your early experience with baseball in the Negro League, we'll be very happy to hear.
Well, my name is James R. Moore. I'm a native of Atlanta.
Yeah.
I was born in Oakland City, northwest Atlanta and everything, so I've been here just all my life and everything, so I've had an opportunity to start early, just to play, had the little league baseball when I was coming along. We little youngster used to start early, playing and everything. That's where I got a chance to learn how to play at the early age and everything. So I was fortunate enough to play with the Atlanta Black Crackers, the Baltimore Light Johnson, Newark Eagles. Down through the years, we formed the Negro League team, you understand. They had a National League and they had one called the Southern League and everything. The National League was a team mostly from the north and the southern from the south. So we had a pretty good organization back in the years gone by. We kind of beat up on some teams that come through and everything. I thought they were real good, and don't play us, so it's from the south, but they know when the players they were playing a team, they were just playing amateur, they were playing with professional teams. So we had an opportunity to play them and everything, and people had an opportunity to see the talent that we had. We had pretty good talent around Atlanta back during the years we played Atlanta Black Crackers around. Oh yeah, I'm left-handed, and see when I came along, we didn't have any left-hand players out there playing baseball, and so my dad didn't know too much about baseball or anything like that. So my first glove was I took a right-hand fella's glove, changed it from left and turned it wrong side out and made my hand fit his glove, you understand? This was my way to have my fingers. I didn't put the fingers in the glove, you understand? You just put it on the side, and it's just enough to hold my hand around the glove, because I didn't put my hand all the way in the glove to catch the ball, you understand? You call from the end of the fingers, you understand? Not in the middle, on the end. Usually, them two fingers right there most caught all the balls, you understand? So it didn't bother me not to have such a good glove. I just had two fingers working. I was doing pretty good.
Did you bat left and throw left?
Yes, I batted left and threw left.
Ms. Williams?
I can't go back as far as Red can, but I can remember I was born in LaGrange, Georgia, and I graduated from high school at LaGrange. And after I graduated from high school, I moved to Michigan. So I went to work for Ford Motor Company up there, and I retired from Ford Motor Company. Now, back to baseball. Before I left LaGrange, though, I remember Red. He used to play with the Black Crackers. And I was only, well, 16, I guess, back then. And I remember they used to play at Callaway Stadium. And me and a couple of my buddies, we would jump, we knew how to, he used to jump that fence and get into the ball game, free, you know. But I remember it, and that kind of made me want to be a baseball player by watching Red more and the Black Crackers. We didn't even have a high school baseball team. So I played semi-pro ball with a lot of guys around Atlanta when I was a young boy. And they were some good ball players, and I learned a lot from those guys. And then after I grew up to be a man, I finally ran into a guy in Michigan from Mississippi. He was a butcher at a meat store. And he knew Buck O'Neill. I'm sure you've heard of Buck O'Neill. He was one of the top black ball players in the Negro League. And this guy, he asked a couple of us guys, he used to come and watch us play in the city league around Michigan. And he said, well, hey, the Monarchs are going to have a trial camp in Toledo, Ohio. And if you want to go, he said, I know Buck O'Neill, and if you want to go down and try to get a chance to play in the Negro League, I'll set it up where you can get to go down and take a chance, you know. So we went down, he took us down to Toledo, and Buck O'Neill, right away, he didn't put me in the ball game. About the 5th inning, he put me in the game, and there was a man on second base, 1 out, and a guy the next batter hit the ball, a gap shot to right center. And I had no idea that I would be able to catch that ball. I got a good jump on the ball, made a good catch, turned through the ball to my cutoff man, and in the meantime, the guy on base was all the way around the third. He was so sure that I wouldn't get it. And I threw it to the cutoff man and got a double play. So that's how I got my shot at being in the Negro League, and I had a lot of fun in doing it.
Mr. Moore, thank you so much for joining.
I don't think I was going to be enjoying the work here, but so many interesting stories. I got out my notebook, so I think I'm going to write a column about this. Really good stuff. You're never off when you're a columnist. Never off. I want to tell you 2 quick stories here. It was going to be one, but I was telling my brother who lived in Cincinnati that I was coming to this event. He said, well, I got another one for you that you got to add. But I want to tell you the first time I met a Negro League player, and this was very fascinating. We grew up, I've got 2 brothers. I'm the oldest. I got one that's 11 months younger, and I got another brother that's 3 years younger than I am. And we grew up as diehard baseball fans in South Bend, Indiana, where you got a little football team in South Bend. You might have heard of it. So we moved to Cincinnati in '68, and that was right at the start of the Big Red Machine. You guys heard of the Big Red Machine? You know, Rose, Bench, Morgan, and that group. So everybody in Cincinnati at that time was a baseball fan, and if you were like small, everybody wanted to grow up to be like the Reds. So we played baseball. You know, this is back in the old days when kids played outside all the time. And I was about 13 years old at the time. My brother Dennis was 12. My brother Daryl was 10. And we had a park in our backyard, and we would play from sun up to sundown, literally, just constantly out there. So my parents had this friend of theirs who used to bowl with them. That my parents were big bowlers in South Bend. Came down to visit. His name was Buzz, you know, and all black people had nicknames, you know, back then, and still somewhat now. So Buzz came to visit. So we're out in the backyard playing. So my mom was screaming at us to come on up. We got to greet Buzz and his wife and everybody. And you know, back then you had to do that. I mean, nowadays kids will probably just blow it off, I guess. But we didn't want to do it. We started walking to interrupting this game, and then we see Buzz coming in our direction with another person. who had come up from South Bend with him. And his name was Trout, another nickname. Trout played in the Negro leagues. So he was telling my mom, don't make those boys stop playing baseball, just let them play. So he comes out behind the batting cage, or back to backstop, and watches us play a little bit. Then it was, when we had finished, he waited patiently for us to finish, he asked all of us to gather around him. So it was about maybe 15 of us. And we just sat there for about a good 45 minutes listening to him talk. And I was asking my brother Dennis to kind of fill in some of the stuff I didn't remember. And he said that my brother Dennis was a pitcher in Little League, and this is Navajo League in Cincinnati, where you weren't allowed to throw breaking pitches. This is a league that Pete Rose played in, and Ken Griffey Jr., and so on and so forth. Trout taught my brother Dennis every illegal pitch that existed, and some that he invented. Okay, one was called the heavy ball. And Dennis was kind of describing it to me, I can't even go into details here. Various forms of the spitball. Needless to say, Dennis got thrown out of several games trying to throw these pitches, but it was pretty funny. Well, what I remember was, he said that his favorite pitch was, he said that if you threw it right, he said your feet would be off the ground and then you'd be facing third base. Don't ask. That's what he said. So that was the one story I was going to tell. But Dennis added this story. Dennis said that earlier this year, my nephew, I got a 15-year-old nephew who plays Navajo baseball in Cincinnati, and he said that the game was going on, and my brother Dennis said he looked up in the stands and he sees this old guy sitting in the stands. And you know, we've always had an affinity, my brothers and I, for older people, just kind of particularly interesting. So the game was over, so Dennis went up to him and said hello to him and found out that his grandson was playing first base, but went further than that. Do we have a picture of this by any chance? He was a Negro League player, and by the name of Charlie Davis. You remember Charlie Davis, right? Yeah. And tell me a little bit about Charlie Davis before I continue.
I remember playing against Charles, but I can't, it's been so long, I mean, my memory is as tight as it, you know what I mean. But I remember Charles playing baseball against him, though. I can just remember him, that's what I'm saying, I would say, right.
Okay. Well, Dennis said he was asking questions, he said the guy was fascinating, and so, yeah.
You know, I was going to do this after Mr. Moore finished. This is
Charlie
Mr.
Davis
Winfield.
was the left-hand pitcher for the Rockville Rock.
Okay. So Dennis is talking to him, and my brother Sam been talking to him about a good 25 minutes, and it was actually longer than that. And then he was telling him about back in the day, unless you were like Satchel Paige, you got, and these two gentlemen could probably fill in the blanks on that. So you got $15 a game. That was a lot. And he was saying that, and then my brother Dennis said, well, tell me your best Satchel Paige story. And he said, Satchel Paige used to take our money. Because what he used to do was, he used to have these bottles. He would have 6 bottles. And he would place 2 on the outside part of the plate, 2 on the inside part of the plate, and 2 right in the center of the plate. So whatever you wanted to bet him, that he could throw a curveball from behind the pitcher's mound and knock over those bottles, and then it was on you, which people ended up paying, and they said people ended up losing. So that was fascinating. And the other story he said that he was told was, he said back in the day, this hit upon what you were saying before about, but it was more than just a baseball game. It was a big social event. So people would go out and barbecue, the players would barbecue with the fans. He said, but once the game started, you were the enemy, and they were vicious games at that point. So those are my 2 stories.
Wow, that's wonderful. Before we move on to Mr. Muhammad and Mr. Ramsey, Ms. Wright, very quickly, I just want to recognize, I was going to do this after the fact, Mr. Wingfield, that's the gentleman, Mr. Odell Wingfield, who's also a Negro leaguer, and just introduced himself to me, and I was like, I will be calling upon you to comment in the course of our conversation as you desire, who also played with the Black Crackers and so forth, so we are very honored to have him to be here. Mr. Wingfield, will you stand? So indeed, we have 3 special guests, extra special guests with us today. But Mr. Ramsey and then Mr. Muhammad.
Good afternoon. I wrote a play a few years ago called Baseball, Apple Pie, and Clan, Shermantown. And And Shermantown was a town out in Stone Mountain, and it's still there. You know, 2nd and 3rd Avenue, right in the village of Stone Mountain near the park. And I played about a team in 1941. They were called the Hard Rocks. I don't know if any of you guys played against the Hard Rocks, but this is where Connie Johnson grew up. Connie Johnson was a pitcher that went off to play for the Kansas City Monarchs and later for the Baltimore Orioles. I think he may have retired after pitching for the White Sox. But my play was about this community. And every Labor Day, the Klan would come there. You know, about 30,000 Klan members, men, women, and children. And they did this every year. I think it may have stopped in the 80s, actually. And so I wrote a play about this village and what it was like living there, and about these men who played baseball. And these guys were a couple levels below Black Crackers. They weren't really, they were semi-professional. They all worked and whatnot, but they really just loved the game, and the community loved them. They raised their own money for the uniforms, and they had fish fries and things of that nature. So I wrote a play about just what it was like being in that community just before the rally, the Klan rally, Labor Day 1941, before World War II. And got a little buzz about the play. A lot of folks, some folks didn't like it, some folks thought I could have been a little tougher with it. But I think the big story was that even among all of that controversy, that the local folks in Shermantown supported my efforts in writing the play.
We have Mr. Muhammad and Mr. White, and then we're going to move on to get into the bigger question of civil rights and Negro Leagues and everything.
Well, I grew up in a small town that's just south of the Georgia-Florida line, and that's in Jasper, Florida. Baseball is pretty much in my DNA. My father played a little semi-pro ball where they actually worked at a mill and they played every weekend. So even as a baby in diapers, from what my brother would say, we were always out there handling the ice, handling the peanuts, Cracker Jacks. They actually played in cow pastures. So most of the time after church, we didn't get a chance to go home and change. We're in our suits and everything. We're shoveling, you know what, to clear it off, because you know that my father's team was pretty popular. They was playing in Bainbridge, Cordell, all these little small towns throughout Georgia and some parts of Florida. And my dad was just adamant, whether it was watching baseball, whether it was out there working with us, he actually put it in all of our DNA. I played from, what they called it down south, Pop Warner League, but we didn't have Pop and we didn't have Warner, we used just Pole League. And so, from Pop Warner, quote unquote, Pole League, all the way up to high school. And I learned about the Negro League in terms of the players by the time I was in middle school. I kind of knew a little bit because a lot of the Jacksonville Redcaps, which is a team a lot of people probably don't know about, because they wasn't at Pop. I think they only played like maybe 4 or 5 years. They was only in Jacksonville, I think, 3 years. But we knew about them, and we knew about, because Jacksonville is only about maybe 90 minutes from my hometown, and Jacksonville is kind of like Atlanta to the country I'm from. So going to Jacksonville, you would see the J, and used to ask my dad about the question. It's always in the home plate, upside down with a J. That was their symbol. And so we used to always ask my dad about it. Finally got old enough to be able to interview and talk to him. And I'm telling you, the first time I ever came in contact with a Negro League player, it wasn't at an event. It wasn't at a high school game. It was actually a Negro League player's home. And this kind of like helps you kind of understand these kind of gentlemen. I was in Jacksonville. I graduated from high school. I got accepted to play baseball at Maryland Eastern Shore. I turned it down, crazy me, and went into the military. And even after I got out of the military, I was still offered the scholarship to play at Maryland Eastern Shore. But I decided I wanted to be a rattler and went to FAMU and had no desire to play baseball at that point because I had a son in the world at that time. But I went home one time and I was pulling up some of the Jacksonville Red Cap players, and a lot of them had passed away. And I found one, Buster Hare, and his number's right there. I'm pretty good with research, you know. So I got the home number. He was he's a pastor. So a lot of the Negro League players today, you know, a lot of them are reverends. And so I called him up, talked to him, and I, told him my interest and why I wanted to kind of meet him and see if my son was with me, could get his ball autographed. And Mr. Hare was just, I mean, he was beautiful. I mean, he was talking to me like I was his son. So he said, "You good with directions?" I said, "Yes, sir, I'm absolutely good with directions. I'm GPS down." and so he gave me the address, got on the computer, pulled it up, drove to his house. So I'm thinking, we got to go on his porch and he'll sign it and we're on our way. Oh no, not Mr. Hare. Mr. Hare actually brought us into the home, showed us awards that he had won, stuff he got in the military, stuff he got from Negro League, letters he received, pictures that have never been exposed to the public, and just really, told my son to keep playing baseball, keep playing baseball. I'm not telling this guy, we got all the way to the 11th grade and that was it. But Mr. Hare just allowed, he didn't know us, we were strangers. He didn't know us, took a chance and we went into his home. Everybody in that community where he lives in Jacksonville, you don't have to, if you don't have the address and just go down the street and you knock on the door and say, "I'm looking for Reverend Hare," they're going to tell you exactly where to go. Down the left, you'll see the porch, And so you go in there. But Mr. Hare was so nice. That was the first encounter for me with a Negro League player. And the second one, I'll mention this one, and then of course Greg can go ahead, was Greg and I had been kind of missing each other for quite a while, but I knew a lot of events was taking place in Atlanta, and I'm stretched out, he's stretched out, and I missed a lot of their events, but they have, have a wonderful website. And so finally, Georgia Tech was having an event. They was honoring Mr. Moore and honoring Negro League players. It was all a part of this national thing that was going on, and I finally got a chance to meet my second Negro League player, and that was Mr. James Red Moore. And in that environment, it wasn't so much just Mr. Moore, it was an aspect of family that the Negro League players actually were a part of, so I got a chance to meet his beautiful wife, and I mean, just the positivity that comes from these guys who sacrifice so much, and you don't find that bitterness, you don't find that emptiness with people who hold on to negative feelings and negative connotations. That's the beauty of these giants who are among us. And that's why it's so important to preserve the history and to make sure that our children's children, they all know about this rich history.
Good evening, everyone, and outstanding to see such a turnout for this great type of history. Like I said, I'm Greg White. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I was fortunate to grow up with a mother who ran the library systems in Durham, North Carolina, and my father was a medical doctor who loved sports. And one of the things I always used to say, we used to sit there and watch games. He said, "Well, let me just begin to tell you about," started saying Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson. I don't see these people on TV. He's like, that was baseball before, that was the Atlanta Braves, that was baseball before Jackie Robinson. I'm like, and some of y'all may remember this, the top of baseball cards when they had that hard stick of bubble gum in it. So that was my first thing. And then on the back of it would have sometime a quote or a question. I don't exactly remember the question, but it had something about Satchel Paige. I was like, what is this, Satchel Paige?
Could you get on the mic, please?
This had to be about 1972. When I saw this name, Satchel Paige. So I lived in the library every day. So I used to read. They used to keep all these Sports Illustrators for me. I collect everything, and some people in this room know I'm a newspaper guy, book guy, I'm always looking. So I said, wow, Negro League must be alive. What happened? You couldn't find anything. So I just started digging. I was on the internet in 1972, 75. Nothing in the encyclopedia. You start asking people around high school, asking other people, nobody knew anything a whole lot about this history. So I said, let me be the person to figure out how do we bring this alive. 1992, I'm at Brown's Mill. They had this whole thing, opening day, all these teams. A friend of mine said, I'm bringing the Negro League uniforms back. So I said, went to see the uniforms, not knowing that they were going to be live players. When I got there, it's like, this really came to life. I always tell kids, if you read a book, and then all of a sudden I saw Mr. Moore in front of me. I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, tell me your story. And this stuff documented. So my encounter was, here's a whole great story nobody ever told. Then I started doing more research. So many Negro League players, the stories never got told. So my first encounter was right here, and that's been my story, is to bring it to life, tell it, share it. And I tell people, read. So many of these great player stories need to be told. So many stories be lost. And that's just been my passion since 1992. And with this lovely lady, Mrs. Moore, I don't move unless she tells me I can move. You know, we do a lot of things, but I don't move until she tells me to move. So like he said, it's family. And then I told somebody, a lot of you all know Monty Irvin. Monty Irvin is one of our best friends. You know, I was like, just to be in the car, you know, to see Monty Irvin and these guys talking Negro League baseball. Redmond went down the street and got an orange soda. I'm like, what? You know, here Monty Irvin, that's a Hall of Famer guy talking. But there's so many great memories, and when they all get together, it's just a beautiful thing. And I told somebody, just to see that story and the passion, and Muhammad and the writers here and everybody here to keep this story alive. There's so much more. If you ever get a chance, and I'll be quiet, please go to Kansas City. I was out there to see the museum. The museum is wonderful. They just had the All-Star game out there, but if you're a baseball fan, you have to go see this.
Thank you, gentlemen. So now, what I want to do is to talk about the Negro League in a time, of course, of segregation. I mean, one of the realities, right, of this rich culture is that one of the reasons why it existed was certainly a part of the segregated Jim Crow, fabric of American society. From it, became a rich cultural history and so forth. But there are realities that are also not glamorous, unglamorous, very harsh in terms of the lives of the Negro Leagues and also what happened to the Negro Leagues in the aftermath of progress, if you will. So what I want to do is have these gentlemen share insights and their thoughts on what was the internal life of Negro League players. Now we know we had a range. We might have had Satchel Paige and some of the very famous players who ascended to a relatively comfortable, perhaps economic life. I believe Satchel Paige had, among other things, playing at one time. So Satchel Paige was blinging for a minute somewhere in there too. But the real lives of the Negro League players is that they had to play. They had to move from city to city in a very segregated society, playing in cities in the South and in other places where it was dangerous, right? Where they were not necessarily welcomed, where they couldn't stay in hotels, all of these sorts of things. So let us talk about what was the condition, the atmosphere that these players were playing in when they were existing. When in a segregated society where you had a white league, right, over here, who might have been aware of their existence, but, the media and the establishment was firmly ignoring, right, their existence, and all the greatest were supposedly, right, in the white major leagues and so forth, though we know that was not true. So I want you all to weigh in terms of your experience about what was that like being a Negro League player in a time of segregation, both some of the harsher realities and maybe the greatest. Yes, sir.
Okay. I would like to talk about Ty Cobb. I'm sure some of the older guys have read about Ty Cobb. During the segregation days, he was the type of guy, he didn't want to play with black ball players, So Detroit, he played for Detroit Tigers back in way late years. He used to, Detroit Tigers used to go down to one of the islands and play the Cuban teams. And Ty Cobb was the kind of guy that, he was kind of dirty player. He'd sharpen the spikes and stuff and try to cleat you or whatever. And he was pretty fast, he thought, So, he attempted to steal second base. First time he went, the catcher threw him out, black catcher threw him out. So, The second time he went, he tried to steal second again. Catcher threw him out. The third time he attempted to steal second, the player got the ball to the second baseman so far ahead of him until he just stopped, turned around, went back to the dugout. I'm not going to play with any black ball players anymore. So that's the part I can see of segregation, why it was. That's it.
Carrot, any insights you would?
We're going to share with you now a little bit, just trying to prompt Mr. Moore a little bit. And remember, he's 95 years old. And basically, he's going to tell you a story about when they played in Mississippi. And he's going to tell you what happened. They kept winning too much. And he's going to tell you what the sheriff told them.
Yeah, we was playing baseball. We was touring at the time and everything. Down the Black Guys was beating up on teams and everything. We doing some winning, pretty good winning and everything. So we were winning. So the sheriff told us after we had won 2-3 games back then, he told us, you niggas keep beating my niggas, we gonna run you out of town. So therefore we had to kind of close down, you understand it. They could kind of watch our way that we didn't want to get run out of town, but we didn't want to get beat up either, you understand? So he didn't want us to be beat on the ball players, or he said, you just don't beat up on my niggas like that. So that's one of the incidents that got to my mind. And a lot of things. It's been so long now, because a lot of teams that we couldn't play because they wouldn't allow us to play. White teams, and so it moved down from early to late, and then we started to play them. But early on, they wouldn't allow us to play them at first, but they found it allowed us to start to play the white teams and everything. So we kind of had some good games with competing against them. But at first, it was pretty hard to get started. But once we got started and everything, we had some good games and all this thing.
Mr. Wright, why don't you, because I know you've done a lot of research.
Yeah, let me just tell a bit. The situation, basically, the sheriff watching Red, you know Red is known as President who could pick him. But when the sheriff told Red, y'all win one more game, you won't get home, Red started, the whole team started having a lot of errors. Balls were going through folks' legs, Red was letting things go they normally caught, they were letting it go so they could get back to Atlanta.
Do you want to share, I know in the course of your research, just a thing or two that you found striking about the conditions?
Well, yeah, I would say this, like I talked to Mr. Moore before. I asked Mr. Moore, when you look at uniforms now, you look at how teams travel, you look at the Braves where they travel now. But I asked Mr. Moore, how many games did y'all play? He said sometimes they played 3 games in one day. And then they would play in the same war uniform. You know, nowhere to wash it. You know, nowhere, it's the same uniform. And, you know, we talked about, I said, well, what did y'all eat? He said, sometimes it's some white, we had food, brown bag. And sometimes, some cities they had to move on. They knew they couldn't stop and go to the next city to get some food. You had to be safe. So you start thinking about barnstorming, just think about those conditions. So I always tell young people, we can never forget this history, because the time, you're talking about the civil rights, especially in the South, these guys faced some tough times, but you look at these guys, they smile, they're delighted to tell their stories.
Mr. Moore, because I know you are a historian of this, you know, as part of your role as a wonderfully insightful journalist, so if you would please comment on that. Great.
I do have a question, but I want there's one more Satchel Paige story I wanted to tell. This jogged my memory with that story. My brother Dennis in Cincinnati was talking to Charlie Davis, and he was telling him a bunch of Satchel Paige stories, and he said that one story was they were playing this game in Mississippi, and Satchel was late. They didn't know where he was. And of course, back during this time, if you were a black person and you were late in Mississippi, then people really started wondering what happened to you. So finally, Satchel shows up, and he said that he was caught, he was stopped by the sheriff for speeding. So he said that the sheriff told him they would let him go if he would pay $25. So he gave the sheriff $25, started walking toward the door. The Satchel Paige turned around, came back, and gave the sheriff another $25. So then the sheriff said, well, what's this for? He said, because I'm going to speed again tomorrow. But the one question I have for the historians and for the two Negro leaders, there are many stories that are out there that you don't know whether they're true or not, and this is one that's always fascinated me, and it goes back. Some of you may have heard of Bill Veeck. Bill Veeck was considered a maverick in Major League Baseball. He's the one that put the ivy in Wrigley Field. He's the guy that everybody talks about, Branch Rickey, about what he did in regards to Jackie Robinson. But Bill Veeck is one that brought Larry Doby to the Cleveland Indians. So and later on, he also hired Larry Doby as the first black manager. So he was a very significant guy. But here's the story I wanted to see if anybody can verify. That's already been out there, and no one can really pin this down. But the story goes that back in the early 1940s, and remember, Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier on April 15th of 47. Okay, so about 42 or 43, Bill Veeck allegedly wanted to buy the Philadelphia Phillies and stock the Philadelphia Phillies with Negro League players. So the story goes that as soon as Kennesaw Mountain Landis found out about that, he was a commissioner of baseball at the time and was a noted racist, that he said, well, we got to put a stop to this. And then they ended up maneuvering behind Bill Veeck's back to sell the Philadelphia Phillies to another team. So again, that has never been verified. Can anybody verify whether that's true or not? So I can have a good column?
I came across that in Bill, I think a book.
That's a good column.
I came across that in a book that's written on Bill, and yeah, you're right. Bill was an interesting character. Now I haven't ran across that in terms of any records, receipt, or anything in terms of that being done and that being a reason, but yeah, that's in writings according to I think it's a biography or autobiography on Bill. Also, one other point you probably know about, and probably a lot of time we forget. Bill was a very good businessman, because when he brought Satchel Paige to Cleveland,